It's Nancy Adamec again from Lena Patchwork, and today I want to do a tutorial for you with points on paper shapes like diamonds. I get a lot of questions about those. So here we have a diamond shape, and I always say diamonds are a girl's best friend, certainly my best friend. I love working with diamond shapes in paper piecing. That's really my kind of thing. And usually what you do is you have your diamonds and they will tessellate or fit together. Tessellate is just a fancy word for saying fitting into a star shape. So this is a 6-pointed diamond because 6 of the diamonds make a star and it has 6 arms. Very easy really. There are lots of different diamonds and I'm going to talk about those at the end of this tutorial. But let's start with this one here, the 6.1 or 60-degree diamond. So we take one of them and we want to prepare our fabric for it. So here I have my fabric, and I find it really easy just to cut a strip of my fabric and then cut the rest with scissors. So what you can do is you can simply lay your shape on there and then just eyeball your seam allowance. So there is my fabric strip. I'm just going to get rid of these threads here on this side as well. So here's our fabric strip. And now I lay my diamond shape on there, hold it parallel to the edge of the fabric. Don't lay them like this. You always want to have them like that. That is less wasteful as well regarding the fabric. Then you use your really nice fabric scissors. They should be sharp. Mine could actually do with sharpening. And then you cut 6. If you want to make a 6-pointed star, you need 6 diamonds. So I'm going to make them all the same color today. So that's 3. 4. 5, and let's hope we can get another one out of this piece. Oh yeah, that was lucky. And 6. I'll just count them again. I'm very good at miscounting these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 fabric patches for our diamonds. Then we need to prepare our needle. I always use a very fine needle, and I really like to use a thread for basting that is different to my fabric color, just so that the stitches are easier to see and easier to remove. So here we're using a dark blue. And I pick up my paper shape and put it on the left side of the fabric, put it nicely in the middle. And now I start to fold over the edges. I start on one of I always do the blunt corner of the diamond first. Don't start on the pointy tip, start on one of the other ones. So you fold over the first edge and fold over the second edge, and you sort of work in a anti-clockwise fashion if you are right-handed. If you're left-handed, you would go the other way. And I start by stitching through the paper, starting in the middle. Don't start at the end, start in the middle. That's very important. And you stitch through all the layers and you come up again in one go. So there's this tacking stitch on the front of the paper, and here is the back side. My next stitch will then go along the next edge. And you can see I stitched over this fold kind of to hold it down nicely. And now I'm at the tip. So here is the pointy end of the diamond. And a lot of people are afraid of this. They think they have to fold it around and all this excess fabric needs to be folded away and under. It's not the case. You keep it really simple. You just turn the paper shape and you fold the edge over like you would on any other paper shape. And it automatically wraps around and makes a little tail here. And you don't do anything with this tail. You don't cut it off. And you don't have to fold it under and secure it out of the way. Just let the tail wag. But what we do want to do is we want to make sure that we put a tacking stitch over that edge of the fabrics to stop it from sort of flapping around. And you turn the shape again, you fold the next corner over and secure it just like you would do on a hexagon. You always turn the shape in the same direction, you always fold over in the same direction. So we're already on the second point here, and what I do is I turn the shape and I fold it over and it makes another tail. There is the other tail. You secure it with a stitch and you come up with your needle somewhere near your start point and you cut the tacking thread. So there is your first diamond shape. So here we have our 6 diamonds. You can see all the tails on the top point one way, all the tails on the bottom point another way. But they are identical, it doesn't really matter which way around I hold these. So this is called rotational symmetry. It's a big word for something very simple really. So we're ready to sew them together. So now we need to find a thread color to match it. And I like to use this lilac color because it's nice to match your thread color to your fabric color. So we need to cut a piece off that. Find a needle to thread. I need my glasses as well. And now I'm threading the needle. I always find it easier to put the eye of the needle on the end of the thread rather than the end of the thread through the eye. So when you take your first diamonds, if you had different colors, you could now decide on which layout you would like for your diamonds. You know, you could have 3 of one color and 3 of another color and then alternate the colors. But here it's quite straightforward. So I take 2 of my diamonds, I want to sew them together like that. So I lay them right sides on top of each other, line up the corners nicely, and I start stitching on the blunt end of the diamond, not on the pointy one, on the blunt end. And I pick up a stitch on the very corner, just picking up the fabric that is on the fold of the paper shapes. If you go too deep, you will feel the resistance from the paper shape and you have to readjust and go a bit shallower with your needle. And then you over sew or whip stitch along the edge. You do a stitch sort of every 2 millimeters. The stitches do not have to be any denser or tighter together than they would be on your sewing machine. It will hold fine, don't worry. I usually do a stitch about every couple of millimeters or 3 stitches to 1/8, something like that. And you keep going. And you can see I'm now coming to the side where the tail is pointing up and it's a bit in the way. So all I do is I just fold it down and out of the way. So now I can see till the end of my paper shapes and I just keep sewing to the tip of the diamond. You want to make sure that you don't angle your needle sideways, but that it always goes in a steep angle, sort of like a plus sign. A couple more. My last stitch will be on the very tip or just before the tip, and I do an extra stitch. This is my anchoring stitch. So when I fold it open now, it doesn't unravel again. So there is my thread. I can now sew my next diamond on, but this time I have to go from the tip, sewing towards the outside of the diamond. So I'll just pick the next one up, hold it on, so that one goes there. Lay it on, right sides together. So now this little tail here is in the way, and all we do is we just fold it out of the way for the time being and do our first stitch in the middle there on the tip. Do an extra stitch on the spot, which is our anchoring stitch, and then we whip stitch along the edge to the other end. Now you can give your stitches a little bit of a tug to pull them a little bit tight, but don't yank the thread. That's not productive. You're just more likely to stress the thread and have a breakage. We just keep going. So this diamond size here is a 1.5 inch diamond. That means that this edge here from corner to tip is 1.5 inches long. That's the way we measure our paper shapes, on the outside edge. We don't tend to measure across the middles unless they are round shapes or flower petals or things like that. But that's another tutorial. So now I'm at the end of the seam here. I'll do an extra stitch at the very end, my anchoring stitch. And when I fold it open, I've got half a star sewn. But I can't add any more pieces on this end now, so I have to cast off. And to do that, I simply stitch in the reverse direction, just going backwards over my seam 2 or 3 stitches. And then I like to bury my thread in the seam allowance, doing a few little tiny stitches there. And then you can trim that thread short. Now, because we have forced the tails out of the way on occasion, now is a good time to just ease them back, give them a bit of a finger press so that they all lie on top. Can you see how they all nestle on top of each other here? And that's why it's very important that all the tails that we make point in the same direction. If you are right-handed, all the tails will point to the right. If you are left-handed, all your tails would point in the opposite direction, to the left. So, tails to the right, if you're right-handed. So that's half a star done. To speed things up a bit, I've already prepared another half star. Look at that. So, this is actually a very good strategy for sewing these stars together. You don't just add more and then do a last seam, you do them in halves and then sew the 2 halves together. It's a lot easier and it gives a nicer result. So we need to make sure we got a thread in our needle with a knot in the end. And now I can simply lay the 2 halves on top of each other. If you're a bit unsure and you want to make sure that they don't shift while you are sewing, then you can use one of these little clips here and put it on the other end, but put it out of the way, otherwise there's a chance you get your thread wrapped around it and that's very annoying. I start sewing on this end so the clip is on this other end. I have to pick up the needle and I start again on the very edge here with an extra stitch, my anchoring stitch, and then I whip stitch along towards the middle. That's the last stitch here. Now I'm going to do my extra stitch, the anchoring stitch, and then go over the seam in the reverse direction, just a couple of stitches in order to cast off. Now I want to secure the end of my thread. Just a couple of small stitches through the seam allowance, pull the needle through and trim that thread short. And here is our star. So I'll just take a moment to ease the tails into a little rosette. You can finger press that, or you can give it a little light press with the iron. We don't normally iron our English paper piecing patches. It's not necessary. And then we turn it over, and there is our star. And you can see I've used the matching thread colour, so the stitches do barely show. Sometimes when they do show, it's because there's a bit of stress on the fabric because it's stretched tightly around the paper shape. Once you take the papers out, all the seams tend to relax and these will not be as visible anymore later. So there's the diamond shape. Now you can now make more of these diamonds, for example in a different color, and I've made some here, and we can sew these in to the outside gaps there, like this, which will then turn our 6-pointed star into a hexagon. It's a really nice way of sewing. You can use a lot of scraps making these, and when you're finished you have a shape like this, and you could then sew these together, all your random hexagon stars. It's quite a nice way of doing it. We can take our papers out once we have sewn a couple of pieces in, only when they're sewn in on all sides. So I can't take any out of this project. What I would have to do is sew 2 pieces on, and maybe we'll just do that. So now we want to sew the outside pieces on. So here's the first bit. I line it up. Make sure this corner lines up and that tip lines up. And to make sure it doesn't shift, you can either put a pin in, but pins often distort things, so these clips are really quite useful. I fold the tail out of the way here. And then I start sewing on the very tip with a knot, extra stitch. So now I come to the end of this seam, and this is my last stitch on the end there. I do an extra one, the anchoring stitch. Now I have to undo my clip to be able to fold it open, and I turn it around and I fold it down so I can line up the next seam. And don't worry, you can just fold the paper shape here. It's actually really helpful. And now I start again with this side and then continue stitching to the tip of that piece. So that's our first piece done. Now I take the next one. Let's use this one here. So I'm just going to cast off now. And just use my little snips to then trim the thread short. So now we can take this paper shape out because it is sewn in on all sides. To do that, you just turn the shape over. You look for your knot of your tucking thread, that's over there. That's where we have the knot in the middle, so it never gets buried under a fold, but it's always easy to find and visible. So there's the knot. I take my little snips and I cut the tucking thread roughly on the opposite side. And now I can just grab the knot of my tucking thread and pull it out, and I can grab the loose end and pull it out, and then the paper comes out as if by magic. You may want to refold your folds there. So there's the paper, and that can be reused many times. So when you are making a complete star, like here, you would then remove all the papers out of the middle and only have the papers in on the outside edges. So this was a 6-pointed star, or a 60-degree diamond. If you wonder where these degree numbers come from, it comes from the fact that we use a circle and then subdivide it into either 6 parts or 8 parts or 5 parts. So when you divide a circle has 360 degrees. So if you divide 360 by 6 for a 6-point diamond, you get a 60-degree diamond. But there are other diamonds out there, and you have to make sure that you're using the right kind of diamond for the pattern that you want to use. So other diamonds are the so-called 8-point diamonds. Like here, there's an 8-point diamond star. So you can see 4 red, 4 blue diamonds, 8 altogether. And when you divide 360 by 8, you get the number 45. So this is a 45-degree diamond. It's a little bit of math, but it's not that difficult. These are the most common diamonds, the 60-degree diamond and the 45-degree diamond, and it is quite important to know which shapes go with these. So, as we already said, for the 60-degree diamond, you can turn it into a hexagon. That means these ones will also tessellate or fit with hexagons to make up patterns. You can, for example, take 3 of these and turn them into a tumbling block or baby block pattern. You may be familiar with this one. And if you look at it, it actually is, again, a hexagon. So 3 of the 60-degree diamonds will also make up a hexagon in this block pattern. But you cannot do this with the other diamonds. So if I take 3 of the 45-degree diamonds, here are some I made earlier, and I try to make that baby block pattern, it just doesn't work. Yeah, there's always gaps. So that's the wrong diamond for that job. This one makes an 8-point star. And you will sew these together just like you have sewn together the other star. You start with 2, lay them on top of each other and sew along. Now, have you noticed how my tails on these diamonds are much bigger than on my other ones? This is one of the side effects of when you fold the fabric around the tip. And what we do want to do occasionally, not always, we want to maybe give these a little bit of a trim. I usually advise against trimming the points of the diamonds because there's a lot of risk that people who are not familiar with it will do it wrong or cut off too much. So the most important thing is never go with the scissors near the tip. You always go away from the tip and you just really trim the outer tip off like that. Okay, that's safe. Now, I said 60-degree diamonds tessellate either with themselves or with hexagons. The 45-degree diamonds, you can see here, they will tessellate with squares. So that's quite a neat way of joining these together. You add a square and then the next diamond. The other diamonds that are out there are more specialized, and I advise you to be really careful what you get and know that they are different patterns. So this is a very slim diamond, the 36-degree one, and it only fits with certain other shapes, so you have to be really careful. It will not fit with the 60-degree or the 45-degree diamond. However, what it will fit with is this diamond here. You can see it's a lot chunkier. And this one is called a 5-point diamond, because if you take your circle of 360 degrees and divide it by 5, you get this diamond here, or this angle here, 72 degrees. You can see 5 of these make a 5-pointed star. So 5-point and 10-point actually fit together. So you can see here, I could fit that diamond around the outside of my 10-pointed star. Now there are also other diamonds like 12-pointed diamonds and more specialized ones, 30-degree ones. Of course, diamonds always have 2 points on them, 2 sharp points. Every diamond has a sharp point at the top and at the bottom. So of course there are also other shapes out there which have maybe just 1 point on them, or more irregular looking shapes. So here is your diamond, but we also have shapes like parallelograms. So they are like a diamond which has been stretched. Then of course we also have triangles. They only have 3 sides. Or we have shapes like half hexagons. So this half hexagon here, it's a hexagon which is cut across from point to point. So this has a point on this side and a point on that side. And when we cover them in our usual way, it sort of looks a bit funny, because one of the tails points sideways and one points up. But don't get confused. As long as you just look at the point itself, if your tail goes to the right, you're okay. If you just twist it around until the other tail points up, that goes to the right, and that shape is fine. Same here. That one goes to the right, that point goes to the right. It's very easy to see on the triangle how they all point in the same direction. It looks a bit like a pinwheel or windmill, so that's a good guideline for you. Again, here are some really pointy diamonds with really big tails. Just gonna cut them off just because I can. So there's my diamond there, and here I have some little diamonds. Now these are 1-inch diamonds, because if you see here, this is a 1-inch grid. It just sort of fits on there, top to bottom. So you can see diamonds aren't really that difficult to deal with. If you have a shape with a point on it, always make sure that you fold the fabric in the same direction, so that all the tails that you produce are pointing in the same direction, and then you'll be on the safe side. Because when you sew them together, all these tails will nestle on top of each other on the back of the project, and they won't be in each other's way. Easy peasy. So, what's holding you back? Do some diamonds.